Welcome.
Die, monster. You don't belong in this world.
Beware, coward.
Hello, everybody out there, and thank you for taking a chance and tuning in with us for our debut episode. This is the Retro Achievements Podcast, where we'll be covering a wide variety of genres, topics, and over time trying fun segments involving the community, as well as having on featured guests. Today we're tackling role-playing games on a segment I'm calling RPGs for You and Me. It's no secret that RPG games can be a lengthy investment, especially have an achievement set tied to it. Sometimes that can be off-putting, causing you to either never pick it up or avoid the series entirely. For exactly that reason, I have my two co-hosts here, Scott and Galowiz, to help us navigate through and get a couple additional viewpoints on what makes a good RPG. Galowiz, let's start with you. Glad to have you on here. Thanks for taking a chance with us.
Of course.
Overall, just let's get a wide look on, who you are, how you're involved in RA, and your thoughts on RPGs as a whole.
Sure. I'm Galowiz. I became a developer on the site back in April of 2022. And I've been making sets every day since then. It has been nothing but an absolute blast. And I started my gaming career with an RPG. It's actually how I learned how to read. It was my motivation to go.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my motivation to go to school and to learn how to read as a kid. My brother said, "You can't play until you learn how to read." And I said, "Okay, I'll take you up on that bet."
I feel like we're gonna have a lot of people in that kind of age range where that's the case. The main motivator is gonna be, well, I need to know what Pokemon I caught,
Exactly.
or something along those lines. Yeah,
Exactly.
Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm sure for the most part, a lot of people listening are gonna have an idea, but always good to hear from the source.
Okay, well, I'm Scott. I'm a game developer by trade. I started about 10 years ago putting this little idea together for a website. I spoke to a few of the friends I had at the time, saying, what if we change one of these emulators and whack some achievements in there? And they said, well, it's a good idea, but let's try it and see what happens. So I did, and then 10 years later, it's become this kind of amazing community. So yeah, this is the kind of thing that is crazy. You wouldn't expect this to just sort of happen, and it has. So I'm very, very lucky like that. So nowadays, let's just say 10 years has been a long time. So over the 10 years, I've been sort of wavering in and out of the site. It's been in the control of the community for 9 out of those 10 years. The first year was me just desperately trying to get people to be interested in it. And I've really wanted to kind of make more of an effort to come back into the scene in the past couple of years, because it's made me realise that this is actually pretty special. Like, to me, like it's something that I've never really appreciated enough. So I want to get back in there, actually get myself developing, get myself some more games on my page to say that I've been involved in making some more sets. So I'm really excited. And when you said about starting a podcast, I thought, well, I could give that a go, right? I mean, how do you do a podcast wrong, right? It can't be that bad. It can't be that hard. So
Exactly.
easy,
We're
right?
going to figure it out along the way. There's going to be bumps, but we'll pave them right over.
Yes,
exciting to hear that you're going to be back on the scene, though. That's something I'm sure not a lot of people were aware of so far. Anything you got your eyes on? Trying to kick down those doors?
I've done a few already. I've done James Pond 2, so that was, and this is past a year, so I don't have a great deal of time. I know it's not the most popular game going.
Oh no, you go at your own pace. Let's go.
I was when I was like 7 or 8. This was the game for me. I loved this game because it was so gentle, but it had so many extra little tidbits. So you could get into the very first roof you go into, and it's all Christmassy and it's all colourful and bright. And there's little pickups. And there's if you collect them in a certain order. So there's like a cake, a hammer, an apple, an earth, a tap. And if you spell out the word cheat, you get invincibility. So 8-year-old me,
that's kind of fun.
Amazed. But then it was like playing the game on learner mode, so it was accessible to me. So James Pond 2 was like one of the most important games to me growing up. It just gave me this excitement about how a game can be. It just gave me an introduction to games and how exciting they could be, And obviously Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles. And I'll get into another one of them as well, which is very special for me, but I'll tell you about that in just a moment.
Sure.
But yeah,
don't reveal anything too bad just yet. But yeah, excited to hear what you're looking at. Dev, that sounds like you already have things pretty much mapped out. And
totally. Let me tell you. So there was James Pond 2, and I think I finished that. Was that last year, maybe, or earlier this year? And then Blaster on the Game Boy, that was a huge one for me because it was the first time that I realised there was a game you can fit on a Game Boy, right? This, and Gargoyle's Quest did this as well. But the idea that you could play a game, this is pre-Pokemon, where you advance and you become stronger, and then you've got these resources you can juggle to then go into a level. And if you're not good at the level, you can earn some more money to buy some more power-ups to make the level easier. It felt like there was this economy almost buried inside this tiny little game, and it was so exciting to me. So yeah, no, Blaster, I finished that about a month ago, and with all this PS2, probably all the PS2 stuff coming out now, I've started digging into Mercenaries.
Yes,
which was a huge game for me. Loved Mercenary. Thing is, I played it on Xbox, like original Xbox, and I very, very nearly completed it at the time. And I just love that game because the idea that you've got these 52 big boss enemies, and you could maybe kill them or maybe capture them, and you get double if you capture them. And there's a whole. It was really, there was lots of depth to it. It felt really exciting. So I've been looking at developing some achievement sets for Mercenaries, but yeah, that's going okay at the minute. That's going okay. It's a lot. I found out that PS2 achievements are a lot. There's a lot more different challenges than there are for
that's true.
Game Boy and Mega Drive.
Very true.
You know what excites me about this is this just goes to show you that we're going to have a lot of topics to talk about, a lot of things to cover, and there's going to be plenty of episodes in the bank. Just seeing that you're this excited about it makes me happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Which is going to encourage people, hopefully, to come back, keep listening, keep giving us a shot on these things. You know, it's something that, like you're saying, without a community, a lot of these projects live and die without anybody ever having heard them. So if we can get people interested, we're going to be talking about, like I said, a lot of topics, a lot of game. And feel free to contact me. It's going to be retroachievementspodcast@gmail.com. Anything that you want to see covered, any segments that you suggest, going to be more than willing to listen to that. And excited to hear any input. Other than that, looking to move forward onto the main segment here. It's just going to be RPGs for you and me, guys. So.
Tiger uppercut.
Bringing us into the meat of our segments, each of us have selected 3 games to put forth to the others and see what makes RPGs special to them, or otherwise have made an impact on their life. Perhaps this can be a good place to start a series. Perhaps this can be a good place to get into the genre if you haven't been familiar with it before. Whatever way you see fit, each of us have selected 3 games. Let's start with Galowiz. What's your first game here that you want to bring to the table, and why is it here?
So, the first game that I have listed for best RPGs or favorite RPGs is the one I mentioned before about, it's the game that taught me that I need to go and read, that my brother wouldn't let me play until I learned how to read. And that would be Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64. Fantastic. I love every single bit of this game. There is not a single flaw. It is perfect. I put this game on the highest of pedestals. Nothing comes close to it. It might be nostalgia, but it's a fact that it's got the most rewarding RPG gameplay I've ever played with, ever. I play it every year. That's how much I love it.
Wow, you actually have a game you play this thing repeatedly year after year.
Year after year. It depends on the time of the year. I usually shoot for around spring. Normally games have like a seasonal tone for me, and Paper Mario is like a spring one because I remember vividly learning how to play it on Easter back when I was, just a wee child.
Sure. So great connotations, great associations with it.
Oh yeah. And it is, I think what sticks out to me the most is that every Mario game before that is, other than Mario RPG for the Super Nintendo, it's all the same, platforming, even the 3D Mario games. Not that they're bad, but it's like you see Mario and you're expecting platforming. But, then as a kid I see this and I'm like, what? There's a battle mode? Excuse me? Repeated music and fights and items? What is this? My brother's like, This is an RPG.
Yeah, welcome to the new school.
Oh yeah.
I had a lot of experience with that game myself. I think I'm a couple years older than you, but it was still something that I played in what I would consider my childhood still. And yeah, just being able to explore that town, the foreground versus background elements that were a little bit, fun to puzzle out. having the party members, as you encountered them throughout the game, you had the option to shift them in, shift them out. Who did you value? Who did you want to level up? The badge system. There was a lot to offer in that game. I'd 100% agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
Scott, did you ever play Paper Mario back on the 64?
Can I make a suggestion? Just a quick suggestion. What if you were to right? Well, imagine this unbelievable person like who has never played Paper Mario. Imagine that person exists. I'm not saying it's me. But how would you discuss? Okay, I'll be honest. I have played about 5 minutes of it. I understand that there's a battle system with it, and that you time your button presses to then chain your jumps on Koopas. Now imagine. Okay, I've played about half an hour of it. But if you were to describe Paper Mario to someone who's never played it, what's it about? What is the point of it?
That's Gala all day. You're more passionate about this. I definitely have something to say afterwards,
Sure.
but please take the ship.
So, it's your basic Mario story. Bowser steals Peach. You have to go and rescue her. But he uses this thing called the Star Rod and gets infinite power and invincibility, basically. And you can't do anything to him. So the first fight in the game that you're introduced is teaching you how to use battle commands. And this is before Bowser powers himself up. When you press jump, which is one of the items you can use to attack, and Mario jumps in the air right before he lands on Bowser, instead of just watching the animation play, if you hit A just on the right frame before hitting Bowser, there's a big window too, so it's not punishing. But right before you hit Bowser, if you press A, you'll do more damage per attack. And you can get different badges and different weapons to change up how that happens. But it's interactive RPG that's not a real-time battle one. So you can sit and take your time to think about what you want to do. The move that you're about to press will tell you how to use it. It'll say press A to jump on an enemy for extra damage. Or there's even, if you hold back the analog stick when you're selecting the hammer, Mario will bring it back and charge it, and 3 lights will come up, and once the third one lights up, if you let go, you deal extra damage. So in a normal RPG, a turn-based one, you would just hit jump, and then that's it. You just watch your character do the animation, and then they do damage, and they jump back, and that's it. But in this game, you have to actually press A and interact with it as it's happening, which was really engaging for a child.
Absolutely, and it was kind of that next step in, N64 hadn't been around that long. I don't know if it was a launch title, but if it wasn't, it was pretty close.
It was 2001. I believe 2001, so but not too far off.
Not too far, yeah, not too far behind. And that was definitely one of the games that I do remember being like, oh, okay, N64 is doing something that Super Nintendo didn't do. We have, and it was that nice balance of interactive, but only for like this 15-second window. Whenever I choose that 15-second window to be, so I do have time to think: do I want to use an item here? Or do I need to shift a party member out, change skills, etc. As for what drew me to the game, I couldn't care less about the story. I couldn't care less about the setting. It was all just, that was the first time I had the badge system functioned very similar to Final Fantasy in the sense of materia. That was my first exposure to it. I didn't have a lot of Final Fantasy growing up, so rotating the badges in and out was a level of customization that blew my kid brain. But loved it. Loved the series. Scout, how about you though? What's the first game that you want to bring to the table?
Okay, so as I kind of like give you a sneak preview before, one of the games that meant the most to me as a child on the Mega Drive was a very colourful, very exciting RPG that not a lot of people seem to play, and it's kind of like one that flew under the radar but got incredibly good reviews, and is now heralded as one of the biggest, most successful, best rated titles on the Mega Drive. It is Shining Force 2, published by Sega in 1993. Is a strategy RPG / tactical RPG, and is my number one biggest love of video games of all time. It was the one game that introduced me to just the fact that you can tell such a big, massive story through these characters who were bright and colourful and interesting. To me as a child, it was like,
exactly.
It drew me in, and the combat mechanics. It's all based on a grid. It's all in squares. It's very similar to chess, which I was a bit of a geeky child, so that was something else that was really interesting to me as a child. So it was a beginner's D&D kind of introduction. So like it felt like you've got these characters, the goblins, they've got archers which are really good at shooting from afar, but you can't attack them. If they get attacked up close, they've got very low defense. It's all this kind of very traditional mechanics that nowadays, it's still quite, it's a lot more popularized nowadays. Obviously, Pokemon kind of took over the popularity when it comes to about 1999 and the start of 3 Pokemon that came out. You've got 3 competing. You've got fire that defeats grass, grass defeating water, water defeating fire. So they've evolved the mechanics so much more now, more in modern day. But back in 1993, the way that Shining Force 2 was implemented, it was just unbelievable to me. Like, I spent hours and hours at this game grinding, but not even knowing what grinding was. And I got...
You were having a good time. I believe that's just called having fun.
Yeah, but yeah,
Exactly.
no, this is the thing. Like, so when you played a game, you could then, once you were fighting monsters, you would take your go, you'd attack them, they'd attack you, and you'd have healers and things like that. So it was a very traditional RPG, but then what would happen is if you were to fight monsters that were not as difficult, you wouldn't get as much XP, or the fall off was really, really severe. So if they were just 2 levels below you, your XP from killing them would go down from 50 to like 5. So it was really hard.
Hey, it encourages you to keep moving along, and
it was.
Yeah.
But this is the thing: I got stuck for about a year at this one place where so this is the one right in the middle of the game. You're supposed to take this. You're supposed to find a tree in one of the towns and take this wooden block that you'd found, push it into the tree, then you go underneath the tree to get the Achilles sword. And you take the Achilles sword back to defeat Achilles by attacking him on his heel. And once you do that, you then get the caravan, which takes you to the rest of the game.
That is some strange crossover between a point-and-click Sierra game. Good lord.
Yeah, it was a very. I don't know. It was a lot harder to work out than I thought. And so anyway, I got stuck at this one bit for a long, long, long time, and eventually looked up in a magazine because there was obviously no internet and things like that. So
Sure.
I looked it up eventually and worked out. I think it was my cousin actually. My cousin and I used to play this like constantly, and we worked it out. We finally got there, and then the rest of the game was a doddle because all my characters were power leveled by that point. They were all like about 30, 40 levels higher than they should be. So
it was a breeze after just spending a year.
Such a breeze. Like you think as well, the healers, right? Their attack went up by 1 per level, which is very low.
Mm-hmm.
But because they were about 30 levels higher than they should be, the lowest, wimpiest healer could one-shot all the other enemies. Because their
Absolutely brutal.
was way above what they should be. And all the other characters were because the healers got a fixed amount of XP, whereas the rest of the characters didn't. So the healers would always get 25 experience for this.
I'm
thing.
just picturing a priest who has ripped his sleeves off and
Literally.
shredded.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in the name of the Lord, I don't need him. I will smite you myself.
I'll heal you with my
Something-
fist.
Exactly.
Yeah, man, it was the best. And something else with Shining Force 2 is there was, and again, you needed a strategy guide for this. So it was one of those kind of not perfect games, but like Mithril, it had this concept of Mithril where throughout the whole game there is something like 25 pieces of Mithril you can find. And you'll find them in treasure chests, or you'll find them literally go up to a tree and press investigate, and it might have a Mithril in it. But there's no indication. Like, there's one point where you
And
go...
what do these Mithrils do, though?
But you go behind a castle at one point, and it's something like 12 steps behind the castle, face up towards the cliff, and just press A, and it will say, Cloud is searching here, or Barry is searching here. And it's Mithril. Like, why would anyone...
Still a tie-over from those eras where, like, the Castlevania kneel, crouch in the corner for 15 seconds and wait for a tornado.
What's the one where you get spun off by a hurricane if you kneel?
That's it. That's Castlevania too.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah, you've nailed it. It reminds me of something of that era of design. I personally never played Shining Force 2, but it sounds like this was chosen for your game because it just was a huge impact on your childhood and something you spent a lot of time with.
It really was. And you know what? There was Shining Force 1. Doesn't have the same impact. There was Shining in the Darkness, which was a labyrinth game, which is fascinating. It doesn't directly feed into these games, but they're kind of like spiritual predecessors in that some of the names are the same and some of the kind of like the music's similar but not the same. Do you know what I mean? It was like they evolved this idea. And then Shining Force 3 I believe came out on the Saturn or Mega CD. I can't remember actually. It's one or the other. Saturn it was. And it's just a completely different game. They took it, made it 3D, and it doesn't feel the same. It's not got the same same beauty. Honestly, the graphics are absolutely gorgeous. Really, really, just really good looking graphics. But I think it fit in this perfect parabola where it's just the best game of the era of this series, and it just means a lot to me. I think
Now, I think you're going to enjoy what I have on my list, just taking a look at this Shining Force 2. Like I said, I haven't played it a lot, but the first one that I'm going to bring to the table personally is Final Fantasy Tactics, specifically the Advanced A2 version. It released on the DS. They had a bit of time to polish what worked in the Final Fantasy Tactics series and what didn't, add a lot of quality of life features, a lot of things that just, sped gameplay along, less menu navigating, that kind of thing, without devaluing the gameplay. Luso, your main character, transported through a magical book into the world of Ivalice. Now, it's the real version of it, whereas the previous entries had this in a fictional dream version. Released in 2008, outside of Japan. In 2007, they had it a little bit ahead of time. This is actually the same game, or same location that Final Fantasy XII takes place in. I remember putting a ton of time into both of those games as a kid. Extensive job system. You're looking at over 50 jobs on this thing, 7 races. So it isn't just handed to you all at once. You have time to build upon it, and skills are tied to equipment and weapons rather than just learned by being the class by default. So one of the things that was very interesting to me is, to be a sniper, you would have to, say, for instance, put this amount of levels in archer and that amount of levels in thief, and together that would unlock, the next thing up. Very interactive to the child brain me, where there was tons of stuff to do in one single game. Back in the days of, I don't have a ton of cash, so I'm not going to be able to buy more games. I gotta hope this lasts me. This game lasted me. Wow, fantastic time, and I was already drawn to a lot of soundtracks in games. And looking back, now that I'm older, I try to see who had their hand in that development, who had their hands in trying to compose these things. This guy was named Masahiro Iwata and Hitoshi Sakimoto. He had similar development style, Ogre Battle, Tactics Ogre, both the one from 1995 and the recent 2022 release. He's hung around in that series the whole time, which is that similar isometric, grid-based battle system. And even stepping in things like Tekken. So a wide variety of games under his belt that he's recorded and tried to have music composer in. Always been something that drew me towards gameplay, honestly. And
it's fantastic music all throughout that series, too.
Absolutely. And it looks like he went on to be some kind of composer in the Crystal Chronicle series at some point as well. So, yeah, he has that Final Fantasy flavor that definitely added to it.
Yeah, I remember watching my brother play the original Tactics on PlayStation, and even that game soundtrack back then just blew me away. But I mean, what Final Fantasy game doesn't have a fantastic soundtrack?
Exactly. No, it seems to be one of those things that they always make sure is front and center.
It's a law.
And something I'd come to know later too is the producer had been around since, at least a battle designer and writer, since the very first Final Fantasy. So that wasn't just a spin-off, we're three sequels into a side series of our main game, let's phone it in. No, they still had the main guys working on it and bringing the heat. And I think it comes to show, and it still holds up today.
Totally.
Which kind of leads me to the next question I was going to ask you guys. For your respective games, have you looked into the set on Retro Achievements? How do you think the set that exists for it holds up, if there is one? Talk to me. Gala, let's start with you. Paper Mario 64, how does it look nowadays with an achievement list tied to it?
Well, there's a funny story leading up to my time with the set. My first set was Castlevania on the, for the Nintendo system. And I mastered it only with one softcore achievement. The rest was all on hardcore. So, it wasn't completely mastered. It was just completed. So I put that on pause and said, well, let's look at Paper Mario. And I was blown away. And I remember, I played this game every year since I was probably 4. And I can't tell you the amount of secret star bits, and star bits in Paper Mario are these little like triangular pieces of stars that you collect throughout the game. They're in hidden locations. Maybe they're under a panel that you have to ground
Sounds
pound.
like Mithril.
Yeah.
Shining Force 2.
Yeah, pretty much, but they're probably easier to spot.
Sure.
And you trade those for the badges that we were talking about earlier that change up how the battle system works. Maybe you trade it for a badge that gives you more HP or more star points, which allow you to do more special moves. Or maybe a badge that changes the sound that your hammer makes when you hit it to like a squeak or something. But I had seen and collected star bits I didn't even know were there, because one of the achievements is to get all of them. And I had never played any of the mini games. And in one part of Toad Town, there's a train that leads you to another section of the map. And right before that train, there's a pipe that you can break. You go down it, and there's this whole like casino lottery system that is just filled to the brink with mini games. And I had never played it before. I don't know.
Year after year, you had played this game, and it's still some to be discovered.
Exactly, and it was same with the badges too. I had never gone and I 100% it when I was a kid in terms of like what was available to me. I didn't realize that there was more. I did everything repeatedly. You know, whenever I'd start to play through, I'd do the same things. I'd get the same badges because I thought that's all there was to it.
That's just the game to you. Yeah,
exactly.
That's all you knew.
And so then I'm like, wait, there's more to it? Are you serious? I didn't even know. So I probably spent...
That's fantastic.
I probably spent around... I beat the game, and I got every achievement but one, which was the bestiary. And that was just a mistake on my part. I didn't have your Goombario scan an enemy to go into the bestiary. Totally forgot about this
Easy
one.
miss.
Yeah,
Easy
and
miss.
it was a boss enemy.
Oh.
So I replayed it. Well, then I missed another boss enemy. I don't even know how. So then I replayed it again, and I wasn't even mad. And I hate replaying games like that. Like I could do it in a year span, but back to back annoys me. But this set was so much fun that I couldn't even be angry. I couldn't even be frustrated.
Good attitude to have about it, I suppose. If you're gonna have to play a game a few times through, at least it's one you love.
Exactly.
So you would say worth checking out?
I think it is one of the best sets on the site. Honestly, it is perfectly crafted for the Paper Mario fan and for a newcomer, since it's such an easy RPG to pick up. I think it should be someone's first and someone's right now. You should play it right at this moment.
Turn off the podcast and go.
Exactly.
Glad to hear it. All right, Scott, have you taken a look at Shining Force 2's set, that achievement list?
Bear with me, I'm making a note of this Paper Mario. You've sold it to me so much, I'm literally now...
Scott has to go. He's closing the podcast.
My job is complete.
I'm taking a copy of it. There's 66 achievements on there.
Yeah, it's meaty.
All right.
That's a wow. I like that. Well, I can top that, actually. The Shining Force 2. So... In 1994? No. In 2014, I spoke quite a bit with a guy called Cerelio, who I'm not sure has been on the site for a while. No, he's not been on for a few years now. And he was a developer in 2014 who said, yeah, I can put some Shining Force 2 achievements together. And there are 99 achievements, which I think at the time was the limit. That was like the maximum that was allowed to be on the website. We did have a 400-point limit at some point, and then there was like a 100 achievement limit. Mainly because, and this is I have to admit this, when I wrote the overlays, the overlays weren't designed to hold more than 100 achievements in there.
Oh.
Because I just thought there was never any chance there's going to be more than 100 achievements. So we're
never going to have more game
I
consoles
just allocated
or bigger games.
I just put 100 elements on the list. I was like, yeah, that's loads. No one's going to go with that. And then they realised that it started crashing when they added their 100th achievement.
Oh, man.
You're like the guy back in the day. Who needs more than 256 megs of RAM?
No one needs more than that much RAM. No, exactly. So it has 99 achievements, which I think is a good number. And I have 77 of those in hardcore. So I'm very happy with that. There's some really easy ones I've missed. And there's a lot of finding all the mithrils. So there's 15 achievements to getting... 16 achievements to getting all of the mithril. And then another one after those 15 for getting all of the mithril in one playthrough. And then the thing is as well, with Shining Force 2, you can promote certain characters when they get to a certain level. And so you get to level 20 with, let's just say, an archer. And then if you promote them as is, they can be promoted to, like... what does an archer go to? Sorry.
No
Archers
worries,
go
but
to...
yeah,
I am prepared, I promise.
you're fine. Essentially just levels up into a better version of whatever the archer's going to be.
So
maybe.
yeah, so an archer gets Elric, for instance, goes, as he stands, he goes into a sniper, but if you find a secret item, he can then be promoted to a brass gunner, which is basically a tank.
Ooh.
So a tank fires bullets over... He can fire... His attack can be done at a distance of between 2 and 3 squares, rather than just 2 squares, which is like a really big benefit. But also they level up in a different way, so a brass gunner then is faster and move further and is a little bit better in resistance because they're made of metal. But the sniper is also very high on speed, but they can't obviously take as much damage. So they're both worth having, but they've both got one's got a pro.
Right, there's a trade-off there.
But that's
definitely what you like to see, is you don't want that one direct upgrade path, because that minimizes the room for customization and the flavor you want to add to your party. So I would much rather see that trade-off than just this is the right answer.
Agreed.
Exactly, and it's interesting. Yeah. It's really interesting how it kind of the game as its own, without the achievements, it suggests that there is like a really good way of doing this, and you are encouraged to make your own team and make what makes sense to you. The achievements, my only bugbear with them is that there is an achievement for promoting all the characters one way and for promoting them the other way. So technically speaking,
you're going to need a couple playthroughs.
You're going to need a couple of playthroughs. Or, if you really plan ahead, just promote them all in one direction, load your save, promote them all in the other direction. And it does sort of like prevent you from doing one or the other. I personally would like to see just promotion in one direction, or promotion in the special direction, like, because it's basically your standard upgrade or your specialized upgrade. I don't know. I think that's the only bugbear with the achievement set. But like I say, this set is 8 years old now.
Right. It's a little bit dated. As it stands, it could probably use a little bit of a refresher. Maybe that kind of deters people away from it. But there's a good game underneath that. Maybe it could even deserve 2 playthroughs. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or 4 like mine.
Exactly.
I don't know about 2 playthroughs. This is the thing.
That was personally inflicted on your end, Gal.
Oh yeah. Oh totally.
So I'm coming from the different perspective, which is going, I don't want to do 2 playthroughs. I enjoyed it the first time. I really enjoyed it the first time. But I've been playing on an RG351M, which is like a handheld device with Wi-Fi capabilities. So playing with that, what I've been doing is, because obviously Shining Force 2, at the time, moving your characters could take a few seconds. Entering the menu takes a few seconds. Doing the little battle animation takes another few seconds. Once you've seen that a few thousand times, it drags a bit. So what you can do is you can just whack it into double speed. You can actually play the entire game double speed, and it doesn't lose anything.
All right, still possible to maintain control and
Completely.
reliably get what you need to do done. That's
Even
awesome.
the music starts to sound normal after a while. I mean, it's not. It doesn't sound normal, but it starts to feel like it could really.
I
go
can
this
fool
fast.
myself into believing it.
Completely.
Yeah, no, I would, as for Final Fantasy A2, say, you guys want to talk about having big achievement lists. Mine clearly came after that 100 point, or that 100 achievement cap.
Yep.
This a staggering 185 achievements worth 1,580 points. That being said, it does only dole them out in little 3, 5s, and 10ers, so it does make you earn them. Solid set overall. Challenge wraps up naturally throughout. Clearly marked missables. There is some grind in there, but nothing that really overstays its welcome. Right now, at the time of recording, only 10 masteries, so it is a steep hill to climb. It's definitely something that people have played, but it's also a very lengthy game. I wouldn't be even half surprised to understand that most of these people who played it just didn't finish it. Not that they couldn't get the achievements done, but it's a long game, and if you're not feeling it, and there's so many other things to play, I can understand. Oh, I'm done with 40 hours in. I'm sick of Final Fantasy Tactics. I get it. Yeah. That being said, I'm also a firm believer you don't have to master something in order to have fun with it. So I wouldn't let that deter anybody. The set's still fun. There are, like I said, a couple challenges in there that you have to focus in on that add a little bit of flavor versus just playing directly through progression, if you were playing it straight from cartridge. But good set to focus in on. Good game to give a shot, and I would definitely recommend it.
When did that set come out?
I'm actually not sure. Being overall on the DS. It can't be that old. Let me pull that up here.
2021 I've got here for the actual achievements.
Oh, okay.
For the actual
Okay,
game,
so
2008.
I'm not too shocked as a developer that it's an RPG of that size. Has only 10 masteries so far, but that is still impressive because a game similar style like Disgaea, I think that's even less, and that came out recently. No, that came out, let's see here. That came out in January, so yeah, and that has even less masteries. So, yeah, I'm not surprised at all, but they're just long games.
Exactly, it's an investment if you're doing the set or not, so I do understand it. That being said, do you want to move on to our next game here and get things introduced? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I don't want to rush ahead, only because you've raised like two, three really interesting points that I really want to jump on if you don't mind.
Yeah.
What? Sorry, you're saying this? So Final Fantasy Tactics A2 has like 9-10 masters. Disgaea probably has even fewer, I imagine, because Disgaea is humongous.
I think it has 10 now. Actually, I think they're even.
Has it got 10?
I think they're even now. They are even.
Because I saw this in the chat the other day where someone had said that they'd mastered Penn and Teller's Desert Bus.
Yeah, I did notice that.
What's going on? Why would you master that?
That is the ultimate grind.
I did say it wasn't verbatim, but I said something along the lines of, if you master that set, you are spitting directly in the face of the purpose of that game. Man.
I think, yeah. We need to. I need to find this on the site whether there's a list somewhere of the fewest masteries of a game. Like, what is actually the top?
I think it's the hardest. That's just the hardest achievements because it does it by the retro ratio as well.
Ratio would be the big thing, yeah.
I don't think anybody that one might be difficult to find for Desert Bus because I doubt people have even started it. That's the hard thing.
True. Is it quite a recent one?
Right, and a lot of people have not fired up Desert Bus
to earn the one achievement.
Right.
That has 5 masteries.
Wow. That's more than I thought. That's impressive.
Unironically disappointed in you 5.
What? I didn't make this website for that to happen. That's not a...
You know who you are.
Yeah, why would...
Oh, man.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I don't mean to derail, but honestly, like...
No, that's totally fine. Oof. Yeah, I guess we just have a few people who like to self-inflict pain. What can you say?
Yeah, exactly. No. Okay, sorry, I'm ready now.
No, you're all right.
Test your might.
All right, we are moving on to our second game that we are bringing to the table and want to have featured in the RPG for you and me segment. Let's start back with Galawiz like we did previously. What's the second game on the plate here?
So this one is not featured on Retro Achievements, but it's probably one of my favorite RPGs in the past 10 years. If you've ever talked to me in chat, you'll know I love specific series a lot, and one of those is Dragon Quest.
Mm-hmm.
And Dragon Quest is the granddaddy of Japanese role-playing games.
Absolutely,
video game-wise.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody would argue that.
And I'm going to be talking about the 11th entry, actually, Dragon Quest 11.
Oh.
Which came out in North America, I think, in 2017.
Yeah, pretty recently.
It is...
Well, all things considered retro-wise, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it is absolutely fantastic. And I know at the beginning we were talking about shorter games to get people started, but this is what I would consider the average amount, and average in quotes, average amount of time I would spend on a JRPG. It's around 120 hours.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, it's Dragon Quest games after 6 can be pretty beefy, but I'm talking about specifically because it's one of the simpler ones, and all Dragon Quest can be simple, but in terms of role playing games and JRPGs, it is simple in concept. Like, compare Final Fantasy VII's materia system to this, and there's a big difference in how easy it can be picked up.
So what I've noticed in my experience with the Dragon Quest series, I haven't played 11 specifically, but it seems like, as you're saying, they don't build up, they build out. They add more systems and more features that are all easily accessible, and there's a lot to choose from, a lot to finalize, and a lot to complete throughout those games, none of which are too super time investment heavy, or, oh, you've got to sit down and learn this, and
exactly.
It's not... Yeah, and that's something that I think is a very good strong leg to stand on for that series.
Yeah, the biggest thing was the job system that's started with, I believe, 3. And if you've ever played a Final Fantasy game or anything like that, we talked about it before with tactics. You level up
Right.
one thing and then switch to another. Games after, I believe, Dragon Quest 7 focused on it, but 8 and 10 and 11 don't. I think 9 does as well. But 11 is your basic RPG. And instead of your character being able to do everything, they have only a couple things they can do. But the way they do it branches out like a tree, which is great because the game takes place in a world with the Yggdrasil tree. So it all makes sense. It all comes back together. You have your main character who can use a sword and a shield, or he can use a great sword, or he can dual wield swords if you want to be double the edge. And
yes,
it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you have a sword and a shield, you're not doing as much damage as someone who is using a greatsword.
No, that makes sense.
If you're using a greatsword, you're not defending as much. And if you're using dual blades, I mean, you're just going crazy. That's just so
Glass
much attack.
cannon.
Yeah, exactly. That's just so much attack you can push out. And every character in your party, I believe there's about 8, can do this. For instance, there's one character named Rab. And Rab can use staffs, and his main magic focus is buffs and debuffs, which is our favorite thing in RPGs. We love those.
We love those, do we?
Yeah.
Oh, God. All right. I didn't
We
know
love
that.
those.
I thought I hated that.
No, we love them. And he can focus on offensive magic, but you can give him claws, like outward, melee claws to attack with. So even he's like a 70-year-old man. Even this old man can pull out these claws and attack.
Can of whoop ass, yeah.
Now, even though it's 120 hours, I recommend it to people because it's such an easy pickup. It's an open world game that feels vastly different from all the others because, other than Dragon Quest 8, but you're dropped in, you're in this third-person perspective, and you can just move around the world freely unless you're blocked off by some story progression. And it all feels woven together, like really, really, really well done. The story is fantastic, and if you're not too big on playing a game and, busting yourself and just destroying your life to get it through, this is such an easy ride in terms of story and boss fights, but it still offers that, that level of challenge. There's
that Dragon Quest flavor, though, as
exactly.
well.
There's this, and art done by Akira Toriyama, so it's just beautiful throughout the entire thing. But there's all kinds of different challenges you can give yourself. There's one mode, I forget the name of the virus. If you know Pokemon, you'll randomly get this thing called
the Pokerus. Yeah.
There's a similar thing that happens in Dragon Quest, but and Dragon Quest 11. But instead of leveling up faster or getting new stats, your character will start dancing randomly.
So no gameplay effect beyond just dancing.
Well, you can't attack because you're too busy dancing.
You got the groove. You can't fight.
The game takes itself very seriously, like every other Dragon Quest, with this sprawling world, and you're fighting like knights that are chasing after you, and huge dragons, and world-ending apocalyptic demons. But then you get this dance going, and your character starts jiving. And of course, every character's dance is different. Or Rab, the character I mentioned earlier,
a little bit of comedic relief in there.
He has the Dragon Ball style, erotic magazines that he'll drop in cutscenes. So
the old nosebleed Roshi type man.
It's this perfect blend of exactly the kind of world that I want to dive into, and it's not, the 11 at the end of the title should not scare you. I know a lot of people don't play current Final Fantasy games because they're like, I feel like if I'm going to play 8, I have to play 7 or 6 or 5, so on and so forth. But
sure.
With Dragon Quest especially, you don't really need to. Like 1, 2, and 3, they all take place in the same timeline, but you can play any of them without picking them up. And that's especially true for 11. Even as a newcomer to the series, it takes place at the start of itself. It references things that Dragon Quest fans will pick up, maybe names or a location or an item, but nothing is nothing requires you to go outside of itself to experience and enjoy. And over the summer that I bought it, I could not put it down. I think my hours on Steam when I beat it were 120.
Wow.
But I have bought it again on the Switch with the definitive edition, which adds new items, new costumes, new I think a new dungeon. I haven't gotten to it yet. But there's just so much to add and so much to love that I bought it again at full price, mind you. That's how much I want them to know I'll buy money. I mean, I'll buy these games with my hard-earned money. And on the Switch, where there isn't any achievements, the Steam version had achievements, but I was like, I need this on the go.
Now, something I've seen, though, is like these games offer, kind of like I was saying earlier, they build out, not up. They offer a lot of in-game almost achievements or completion lists from the bestiary or the item drop list, things like that, that do encourage almost a completionist playthrough.
There's a lot. There's also this really interesting Coliseum mode, and a lot of RPGs that have this kind of gauntlet, they operate the same way. Dragon Quest XI is no different. You just walk into a Coliseum, they say, all right, choose rank A, and then you go through it.
Sure.
But I'm not kidding, and I would say I'm a Dragon Quest vet now. The first game that I played in the series was Rocket Slime, which is a game I also developed achievements for. It's not an RPG, it's a tank-based shooter.
I've put some time in, actually, out of Rocket Slime. I didn't end up playing it before, back when it was on the actual DS, but I did see a set release for it on RA, and I figured, you know what, this looks, a laid-back, chill game. Let's pick this up, see if it is, and you know what, it was a good play.
Yeah, that's what introduced me.
That. Yeah,
it's been fantastic.
Absolutely. But I wanted to move on to the next game there. Scott, what did you have on the table for your second pick?
Can I? Yeah, okay, I got it. So this is a huge game, literally huge game. It came out in 1997, so I've moved on from Mega Drive, managed to get myself PS1. I was very excited about that, and this was the game I got with it. And on Christmas Day, I remember saying to my parents, well, is there any chance I can go to the video game hire shop? Maybe I can buy a different game? And they said, no, it's Christmas Day. They won't be open.
Right.
And I wasn't disappointed.
Every
I'll be honest,
struggle.
I wasn't disappointed. So I carried on with this game, and I thought, this is quite interesting. And I've seen so many good reviews about it. And you've already touched on it. You already said the word materia. It is Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, yeah.
The big blockbuster release. Arguably one of the largest JRPGs of all time, culturally wise. Definitely something that, even if you aren't familiar with the PS1 or video games as a whole, if somebody showed you the main character, Cloud, his hair, and the larger-than-life sword, they'd be like, oh, the fantasy final game? Fantasy? Yeah, so they'd know. They'd know. So what makes it so special to you? What, beyond the obvious, what makes it special to Scott?
So this was my second biggest obsession with RPGs.
Sure.
So Shining Force 2 set me up for understanding that stories can be told in such a really arbitrary way where it kind of sucks you in and makes you interested in the story. It tells the story not just through the interactions and the communication that happens in the story, but also through the setting and the environment and the fact that you yourself have to explore to find things. Final Fantasy VII, to me, was like the next level up. This was like growing up into video games. This was growing up into RPGs and what RPGs possibly could be. And I completely min-maxed it. Like, I was there leveling to 9,999 attacks and HP and getting all my materia. And the fact that, so this is another thing, it really appealed to me at the time, for whatever reason, the idea that you could get your materia maxed out. And once you maxed out your materia, it would then have a baby, and then it would have a baby materia. And then if you maxed out all the materia, they would globule up together into this mega materia. And that just blew my mind, that you could master it. Like,
sort of similar to, the series that has always been compared to it, and just discussed for Gala, was Dragon Quest. They had a lot of systems and a lot of features inside those games, predating achievements that still felt like an achievement, i.e. complete the material list, build them all up, max out the levels. It's something I believe that before achievements were a thing, people already knew, hey, we need to have something a little bit extra here for the player. If we do just a couple more steps, we can get a lot more time investment that feels good out of the player. And that's a standing test to it. What else about Final Fantasy VII that really drew you to it? And do you ever, just as a sidebar, think about it relating to Dragon Quest or the series and
Well,
how they kind of inspire each other? Or
let me tell you my experience with Dragon Quest. So I did play a game on Game Boy when I was growing up. That what was the name of the game you said before? It's to do with it was to do with what was it? These little bats, and basically you could have your own little gremlin and grow him, and then you take him back to a place where
monsters.
It was to do with monsters. It was something called monsters. It was monsters in the title. But essentially, you grew your own monster, and then they evolved, and then you could put them in this place where they lived, and they felt like they were real. So it was kind of like a pre-Pokemon-esque type thing. I remember playing that and thinking, I love these little characters. Like, there were so many of them, and a lot of them were like little, just the traditional Dragon Quest blob monster.
The slime.
The slime. I don't know a great deal about Dragon Quest, I must admit.
No, you're all right.
But my introduction to Dragon Quest XI, and it wasn't a great introduction, because I didn't spend a great deal of time with it, because I was intimidated by the fact that it was a humongous game, and I was told to expect, like you say, 120 hours. And I thought, I want to do this game justice. So I've been pushing it back, and it's still on my Xbox now. I think it's available on Game Pass. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain it's on my Xbox, ready for me to play.
Right.
But my introduction to it was Dragon Quest Builders.
Oh,
so
yes.
I had
Oh, wow. All right. I did take a look at that. A spin-off that I dabbled in that as well. Dragon
Quest Builders on the PS Vita. I absolutely mastered that game and thought it was incredible. So this is not an RPG in your traditional sense. It's close to a management game. It was sort of an action adventure as well. I think you leveled up. I'm not quite sure.
You did. Yeah. But you leveled up your stamina, your hunger, and your health.
It was in a very comfy manner. There wasn't anything that was like, oh, you're going to get, in a gameplay dead end if you level up wrong.
Exactly. There was a lot to that game. There's a lot to it. And what obviously appealed to me as well, which is the very traditional, you've got challenges to do in each of these areas, and you can get up to 5 gold stars for achieving each of these challenges, which... That's me in a nutshell. I want my challenges, I want my achievements. That's all about my...
Sure,
that's what I'm into.
Definitely.
So I love Dragon Quest Builders, and then there was a Dragon Quest Builders 2 that was Japanese only on the Vita, and then also Dragon Quest Builders on the Xbox. And I thought, well, I'm loving this Dragon Quest. I don't know a great deal about it. I never crossed paths with it when I was growing up. Not my childhood and throughout. But I started thinking, there's got to be something quite exciting here, because I'm recognising the name. And I never got to it. So now, obviously, that's going to be added to the list. So I'm going to be busy this week.
Sure. Now, was that something that, hey, I don't have access to Dragon Quest, but I do have Final Fantasy here? Maybe this is...
Well, no, Dragon Quest was a SNES / what was after the SNES for Dragon Quest? Was that on the DS?
It was on PlayStation as well.
It was on PlayStation? Oh, I missed that completely.
But it sold very poorly.
Me and I missed it. Oh, really? Oh,
yep.
I see.
Yeah.
Almost nobody played...
There's a reason you didn't have access to it.
Exactly. Yeah, almost nobody played the 7th game, and that's no one's fault other than that game for that era was also 120 hours. So yeah, it's a long game, and even as a fan, that
had to be a back when they put 4 discs in a giant gem case. Yeah.
The intro alone is 3 hours. If you can get through that, you will have a blast. But it is a bit of a slog to get through those 3 hours.
Well, that was on the PS1, and while it didn't sell well, Famitsu gave it 38 out of 40 according to this. That's humongous. Famitsu does not get that.
If I was, if I was cognizant back then, I would have sold it myself. I would have said, everybody on the playground, you better buy this game.
Yeah. And that was 2000 as well, which is quite a lot later than Final Fantasy VII as well.
Final Fantasy VII is definitely, like I said, one of the largest JRPGs that it's a colossal juggernaut of cultural force. It cannot be argued. Since my game, much like Gala, that I'm choosing for the second one to put forth doesn't have a set, I want to touch on yours here. Are you familiar with the set on the website? How do you feel about it? What are your thoughts on the length of it or what have you? If you've looked at it, talk.
Yeah, so I have. I've played Final Fantasy VII, mastered it as a child. I came back to it as an adult with retro achievements, and it's quite intimidating. Like the first, I'm only about an hour, maybe an hour and a half into it. And there's a bit where you have to escape from the reactor with a huge amount of time remaining. And I tried this over and over and over and got very frustrated because to be able to get out of the reactor, they give you a very huge time limit, 10 minutes they give you. And to get out of the reactor under a certain amount of time, you have to have fewer than, I think it's 4 random encounters.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
So
it's pure gamble.
So it's RNG, and we talked about RNG achievements, and I'm on the fence with it as well, because I know that if I do it again, I'll manage it. So
Right, if you do keep rolling the dice enough, you can get it, but you could be rolling for a while.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of achievements on the site that have bothered people, like the one, I think the Penniless Plumber one really bothered people.
What's that one there?
Penniless Plumber is, if I remember right, Super Mario Land. Complete the first 3 worlds without collecting a coin.
Oh, good lord!
That's a pretty tough challenge.
Yeah, no, and it is going to be, like you said. I haven't played Final Fantasy VII on RA. I did put a lot of time into it as a kid growing up as well. But I have heard that it's a pretty divisive set. Either you love it or you hate it.
Yeah,
but,
I feel the same way as you.
Yeah,
I loved it as a kid. It's very hard for me to want to get into it now. Mostly, honestly, that first achievement you were talking about, Scott, that I believe the intended strategy is to learn how to use RNG manipulation.
Yeah.
And
wow.
And while I love, taking my time and exploring advanced concepts in games, like, I love the first Fallout game. I should tell you a lot already. I'm like, at some point I'll try it, but right now I don't want to fool with it.
Honestly, for me, it's not so much about the set, just so much by, like, once you've played through one of those long RPGs, it's really, for me anyway, it's really hard to go back and play them again. So
yeah, I can understand
set
that.
withstanding, I've had my fill of Final Fantasy VII, loved it. And hell, we're so far along that they've remade it, and we're working on the second half of that remake. So if I want more, it'll be there for me.
Do you know what you said? I meant to say this before. Is that as much as I'm on your side with this completely? Is that I know I'm a lot older now, and I don't have time to really invest in getting this achievement. And there's a problem. That happens immediately after I say that is that I'm looking at the screen and I can see that I don't have all of these little boxes ticked, and I don't have the 100%.
This little itch starts on my arm, and I'm compelled to itch it.
It so bothers me, and I can't explain it.
I gotta get my badges, bro.
Because this is it. This is exactly right, and I don't know where that comes from, and I can't get rid of it. It chases me. It really chases me.
I'm very thankful that, for whatever reason, knock on wood, that I have not been bitten by that bug. I do not have that obsession.
I never thought it would get me.
Do you feel that way about other things with achievement sets? Because I have a couple of platinums on PlayStation, on PS3 and PS4, but I've never played a game and then said I now have to go back and get every achievement, unless I'm coming back to like Metal Gear Solid 3 on
if
PS3,
you're having fun with it, I imagine it would be easier to do.
Exactly. But do you feel that way with any other official sets, or is it just for retro achievements?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Blank yes.
That's good to hear, I guess.
So I recently got my 100,000 gamer score on Xbox. And
wow, okay.
Some of that is, and this is 10 years worth, so this isn't 10,000 a year, 10 finished games a year. It actually sounds worse than it is, but the Just Cause series and the Far Cry series and Sleeping Dogs, and it turns out it's any Ubisoft game, and my friend always takes the mickey at me for this. He said any Ubisoft game where you're icon chasing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's true.
But
that actually just started to fade off and get dogged on pretty recently.
Yeah.
What I remember on Elden Ring's launch, you had a lot of people in a very niche game design department, which would be UI elements, complaining, this isn't right, this isn't traditional, you're doing it all wrong.
Yep.
Come to find out, they get blown out of the water. It's going to be most likely game of the year, if not a strong contender for it.
Yep.
And that was I would say the nail in the coffin for that icon chasing style of gameplay, or at least I hope it was.
I don't know. The thing is, Far Cry 6 just came out, and it is a carbon copy.
Don't do it to me.
Far Cry 5.
Do it to me.
It is. It's the same strategies, and it's the same. It's the same gameplay, and it just goes. Here is this most explosive, colourful, exciting world. It's fantastic fun.
Run from A to B to C to
run from A to B.
Symbol.
If you run from A to B faster, we'll give you a little badge. And then it's the whole game is just icon chasing. You look in your mini map, and every one of these little things, it feels like if you don't get them all, what if you don't get them all?
Well, why are you? Yeah. Oh no, there's things to do.
Now that style has worked too. I mean, I hate it, but it's worked, which is why they keep doing it.
Yeah.
Not that I don't want to keep dogging on this style of gameplay, but I feel like that might give us another episode's worth of fodder if we save it for the back pocket.
Oh, true.
I want to bring on my second game to the RPGs.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. You go.
Yeah,
first.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, it's no apologies at all. It's just, I think we just uncovered the next topic. The one I'm going to talk about is Valkyria Chronicles 4.
Yes.
More of a modern release. I'm more into the setting of the game rather than the story so much. It takes place in a nondescript, quote, war times of the 20th century. It is building on itself. The story does loosely trail along from entry to entry, but you can jump in at any point and get just enough information to go along. You're not going to be missing anything. It isn't so highbrow that you're going to get lost in the weeds on that. And like I said, what really draws you to this is what's called the Battle of Live Tactical Zones, or acronym BLITZ. It's sort of this real-time mixed with strategy element way of fighting. You individually control a unit and a squad of up to, I think, 5 to 6 people. It's based on how many action points they take up. And can walk around the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
You encounter a trap, or if you encounter some kind of resistance, that will say you're crossing an alleyway. A sniper can take a shot at you, even though it's still turn-based. He won't be able to chase after you, but his line of fire is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to factor that in moving about. Very, very fun game, though. A lot of classes to play with. You'll start to see a trend in the games that I kind of like when it comes to RPGs, and it's, hey, I want to choose my classes, and I want to choose my weapons and how I play. Really don't like being railroaded into those kind of systems. And one thing I wouldn't find out until later was this has the same composer as Final Fantasy Tactics A2. So, Hitoshi Sakimoto has been around for a while, and I've been listening to him for far longer than I anticipated or knew of. Great composer. Have either of you guys experienced? It sounds like Gali, you definitely have played some of the Valkyria Chronicles games.
Yes, I but I haven't beat.
Don't worry, I haven't either. Absolutely not.
We play RPGs for different reasons. You play because you want to, not because the story is really sucking you in, like you said.
Right.
You're like, whatever. For me, it's like I like the whole mixed bag, but the aesthetic of Valkyria Chronicles is just perfect for me. It's this weird, not World War II, but definitely.
Yeah, we don't want to
it.
say it's World War II because we're not going to step on toes, but you know where we're
at. But it's like this perfect, like, you take everything that you know about real world stuff and just drop it in this fantasy world, and it just fits together in this nice blend where you don't feel it's entirely out of place. I mean, you're using guns that feel like they could be real. When your character shoots, they've got like the recoil animations and
great
when they
feedback
throw
to
grenades.
them. I agree.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you're shooting at tanks that are powered by like these huge batteries on the back, which you can shoot, by the way. Just if you start playing, make sure to shoot.
They do have the Zelda weak point. Look at me. Yeah.
But it's like this. When people make fun of anime because they go, up and crazy and everything's exaggerated. But in this world, it feels like they took the technology that could have been and then exaggerated it and brought it to the forefront. So it's really interesting to see that mixed style of...
And that's part of exactly what draws me. Like I said, it's not the story so much, it's this imagined world that they've created, and I get to kind of move about and live in. Now I get to feel these new guns. Like you were saying, the retort, the feedback on them, the sound effects, they all seem to be individually based. Even the way that when a tank moves, you'll have these grinding gears, and that's your alarm to like, oh, I have to really beat feet right now or I'm going to get shot. Fantastic games. I've very much drawn to them. Scott, have you played any of the Valkyria Chronicle games?
I'm literally looking through, going, I recognize the name. I'm sure I've played a PSP version of this, and I'm trying to work out which one it could have been.
I do believe it had at least a couple releases on the PSP.
I think the first one, might have been.
Yeah, it looks like... Okay, so it looks like the first one was PS3, or PS4, or Switch. And then 2 was on the PSP, and 3 was on the PSP. So I'm sure I've played 3 on the PSP, but it's a long time ago. This was like
sure.
Yeah, 2010. So I've played it, and so if I can just get my head around it, it's a merge of kind of like anime meets World War II meets sort of tactics. What kind of like? So it's an RPG, but
Yes.
it's also,
Yeah, it is that semi-real time where only one unit is moving, but you don't move to an actual square. You're using a joystick and you're moving around within the allotted action points you're given. It takes some to use an item. It takes some to equip a different gun. It takes some to use that weapon. Those kind of things.
So it's a strategy RPG then.
Yes, it takes some planning and forethought. You don't really have to worry about reaction times or anything like that.
There is a cool system that's in, and I'm going to expose my nerd. in
Go
the
on,
chat.
please.
But I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I play it weekly with
Sure.
With some friends. And one thing that's really cool about D&D is, and I forget if this is a new edition or not, but when a monster is like, if you've got two people and they're fighting a monster, if that monster is focusing on player 2 and player 1 is right in front of that monster, if that monster takes
Disadvantage.
not only do they get disadvantage, but the opposite player
Attack
gets an
of
attack of opportunity.
Yes.
And Valkyrie Chronicles actually has that, which is super interesting.
Absolutely.
Because if there's like two gunners and they've got their AKs, let's just say, trained on one side of the map, and they're just sitting there, if you walk past them and you get in their line of sight, they will open fire on you. Now it's not going to be the most accurate, but because you're moving, but
Right.
you'll take damage.
And that's something fantastic as it applies to you as well. If you have a sniper class, you can go prone, giving them great cover, great disadvantage to anybody else who's trying to shoot them. And for the most part, this alleyway is going to be covered and I'm safe to move about with my other characters.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
I
really
love the
interesting.
game. Absolutely, absolutely. Scott, definitely one to add to your list. I know it's just
Yeah.
going to be endless by the end of the day.
It really is. It's a long list already.
Right. That being said, do want to get moving on to our next game of the session here and bring forth our third game. Hey everyone, Time Crush here. Thanks for listening in. This unexpectedly ended up running fairly long, so we decided to break it into two parts. Hope you enjoyed this debut episode of our Retro Achievements podcast, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.